The champagne flute felt cold and heavy in my hand, a stark contrast to the boiling rage in my gut. My father, Robert, stood at the front of the grandly decorated room, his arm wrapped around my mother, Eleanor. 50 golden balloons bobbed at the ceiling, celebrating 50 years of what everyone believed was a perfect marriage. He raised his glass, a practiced smile on his face. "To my beautiful wife," he began, his voice booming, "and to my children. Even Leo," he added, turning his gaze to me with a familiar, condescending wink, "who by some miracle of genetics managed to get his mother's kindness, though God knows where the rest of him came from." The crowd chuckled, a familiar ripple of polite laughter that had been the soundtrack to my entire life. But this time I didn't just lower my eyes. I smiled back, a slow, deliberate smile that made his falter. Because in my jacket pocket I had a piece of paper that was about to turn their golden anniversary into ash. Growing up, the joke was my constant shadow. At baseball games, Robert would yell, "Don't swing like that, Leo! You look like you're trying to swat a fly," before turning to the other dads and sighing dramatically, "He gets it from the milkman, I swear." When I won an art scholarship, he examined my painting and announced at dinner, "An artist? There are no artists in our family. Must be a recessive gene from 100 years ago." It was never just a joke. It was a weapon, sharpened daily, meant to carve out a space between me and the family I was supposedly part of. My mother was a silent accomplice. Whenever Robert made his jokes, she would flinch, a barely perceptible tightening of her lips, before quickly changing the subject. Her silence was a different kind of pain, a confirmation that I was a problem, a secret she was unwilling to defend. The only person who ever saw me was Julian, my father's best friend. He was our constant, a fixture at every holiday and Sunday dinner. While Robert scoffed at my doodling, Julian bought me my first set of professional paints. While Robert criticized my quiet nature, Julian taught me how to play chess, celebrating my strategic mind. He was the one I looked up to, the one whose approval I craved. People would sometimes comment, "It's uncanny, Leo, you have Julian's eyes." And my mother would rush in with a nervous laugh, "Oh, it's just a coincidence." The final straw came a month ago. I'd brought my own son, a newborn, to meet his grandparents. Robert held him for a moment, looked from the baby's face to mine, and said loud enough for my wife to hear, "Well, at least this one looks like he belongs to you." In that moment, 50 years of jokes coalesced into a single unbearable point of agony. That night, I swabbed my cheek, and I sent another kit to Julian under the guise of a health screening gift. The injustice wasn't just the teasing anymore. It was the theft of my identity. I had to know the truth. When Robert finished his toast, I walked to the front of the room and took the microphone from his hand. "I'd like to say a few words as well," I said, my voice steady and clear. A hush fell over the guests. "For 50 years, we've all been part of a running joke," I began, looking directly at Robert. "The joke of where I came from, the mystery of the milkman. Dad, you've built a career out of that joke at every family gathering." I paused, letting the discomfort hang in the air. Robert's smile was gone, replaced by a confused frown. My mother looked pale, her hand gripping his arm. "Well, tonight, I have the punchline," I continued, reaching into my pocket and pulling out the folded lab report. I decided to finally solve the mystery. I did a DNA test. I let them process that. The room was so quiet you could hear the ice clinking in the glasses. My mother's eyes widened in sheer terror, and the results were fascinating. "It turns out I am 0% genetically related to you, Robert." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Robert's face went from pale to a deep mottled red. "You were right all along," I said, my voice cold as ice. "I don't get it from you." Then I turned my gaze to the man sitting at the front table, frozen in his chair, his face a mask of disbelief. "Because I get it from him." I held up the paper. "A 99.99% paternal match to your best friend Julian." The explosion was instantaneous. My mother let out a strangled sob, collapsing against Robert. Robert looked from me to Julian, his face a grotesque mixture of rage and utter humiliation. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The guests were staring, whispering, their faces a mix of shock and morbid fascination. All the polite smiles were gone, replaced by the raw, ugly truth. I placed the microphone carefully back on the stand. I didn't need to shout. The truth was louder than any noise I could ever make. I looked at the three people who had built my life on a lie, the man who had mocked me, the woman who had let him, and the man who should have been my father. Their